Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the most comprehensive Hindu analysis on YouTube. So let's begin our discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 9 important articles for a detailed coverage. So let's cover these topics comprehensively by going beyond the articles so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. Before we start, I have a very important announcement. Unacademy is providing a flat 55% off on all our subscriptions. So those of you who are looking to prepare for 2026 and 2027 civil services exam, you can make use of the offer to enroll for our classes at just 17,999. I'm told that this is a limited time offer and you also get CSE Assure guarantee if you enroll within the offer period. Under CSE Assure, for some reason, let's say you're not able to clear the exam, then your next attempt is entirely on us. You will get a free extension on your subscription, provided if some terms and conditions are met. So if you're interested to enroll by using this discounted price, please check out the link provided in the description. And on the subscription page, you will see a different price. So to avail the flat 55% off, you have to enter the code IAS English. So with this, let's get started and look at the first topic. On page number 13, the Hindu has published a detailed article on the recent guidelines and the new regulations that have been notified by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology to regulate synthetically generated information. In order to generate AI generated content, the government of India has brought out a new set of regulations. So, this is something we had discussed briefly in one of our recent sessions. But today we can carry out a much more detailed analysis from a mains perspective as well. So, let's dive a little deep into this topic, understand what are these IT rules. Let's look at the background of IT rules as well. Understand why synthetically generated AI content can be harmful, what kind of security challenges can come up because of it, and what are the new regulations the government is aiming at, and what would be its implications. So, when you look at the new regulations notified by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, there are a host of changes which have been made to the IT rules. The IT rules of 2021, they have been amended several times in the last 5 years. So this would be the latest set of amendment. So these rules, they specifically apply for AI generated content. It applies for deep fakes and synthetically generated audio visual content, which are used essentially for various purposes. It could be purely for entertainment purposes or for spreading misinformation or for trying to trigger unrest in the society. So every artificially generated content through AI algorithms, algorithmically generated photos, visuals, and any such content which is circulated on social media, it will get covered under the new set of IT rules which have been notified by the ministry. Now, when you look at IT rules, it was first brought out in 2021 to replace the old set of IT rules under the Information Technology Act of 2000. This is the legislative basis for these regulatory rules. So under the IT Act, the Ministry of Electronics IT, it has the regulatory power over all IT and electronic computing resources in the country. The whole IT industry, the tech industry, any form of electronic commerce, the exchange of electronic information and transmission of electronic data using computer resources. This is entirely covered under the provisions of the IT Act. The IT Act even deals with cybersecurity and cyber scams and cyber frauds. So, under the IT rules that were brought out in 2021, the government of India tried to bring social media, OTT platforms, and digital media under its ambit of regulation. So the initial set of IT rules that were brought out, they specifically applied for social media intermediaries. It applied for all forms of digital media. It also applied for OTT platforms, your over the top streaming platforms. But in the last 5 years, the IT rules have been amended several times. The scope has been expanded, its overall coverage has also been expanded. And today it even covers online gaming and several other digital spaces, including the world of generative AI. So, all these tech platforms that operate on the internet, they come under the jurisdiction of the IT rules. See, under the IT Act, the tech entities they enjoyed something known as the safe harbor provision under section 79 of the IT Act. So when India was looking to emerge as an IT hub in the early 2000s, when the IT Act was enacted in the year 2000, the focus was on incentivizing, encouraging the IT industry. So it was essential to provide them some sort of legal immunity with regard to any harmful content which could be posted on online platforms. The idea was you can't hold these tech platforms directly liable and accountable for content being posted by the users. So some sort of legal immunity was provided through section 79 of IT Act, which we refer to as the safe harbor provisions. Meaning this platform and its executives, they will not be criminally liable for any harmful objectionable content posted by the users on their platforms. But this thinking has changed over the years because we have seen in the last 2 decades how social media and IT platforms can be misused to create security problems and law and order challenges. Take, for example, the Arab Spring movement, how it can be used to mobilize rebellions against governments, or even incite civil wars, or incite communal tensions, how it could threaten national security, how it could be used to defame someone, or spread child pornography, or target women with objectionable photos being circulated, manipulated photos also being circulated. So, when all these challenges and threats came up, eventually the government had to step in. The Supreme Court had taken note of these threats, and the Supreme Court even recognized right to privacy as a fundamental right under Article 21 in the landmark KS Puttaswamy judgment. So this meant digital privacy would also get covered. Then, even the parliament took note of the threats emerging from IT platforms and social media platforms. Parliamentary committees they brought out reports urging the government to bring better regulations and consider removing safe harbor provision for these companies if they don't cooperate with law enforcement agencies. Because there were many instances in India where these popular platforms they would refuse to cooperate with police and law enforcement even in active ongoing investigations. So under the name of data security, and also because many of these companies they wouldn't store the data in India, their data centers would be located abroad, and they would claim that they don't fall under Indian legal jurisdiction. So it would be a nightmare for police and law enforcement agencies to get access to the accounts which were spreading such misinformation and creating fake news. It was very difficult for the authorities to track the individuals responsible for generating such harmful content, including those who were circulating rape videos or revenge porn videos or child pornography videos. And these companies wouldn't take down the content as well. So it was essential for the government to bring these entities under the strict regulation of our laws and place them under Indian legal jurisdiction. So, in this context, the IT rules were brought out regulating social media intermediaries, digital media, that is, news sources which exist only online. For example, platforms like Swarajya, The Print, Wire, Scroll, etc. These are news platforms which have only an online presence. So they fall under the bracket of digital media. Then OTT platforms, the streaming services. And later, through amendments, even online gaming has been brought under its ambit. And now, generative AI and synthetic AI also gets covered under the IT rules. So, as per the provisions, if these intermediaries who are basically present between the users and the consumers, right, they create or provide that platform where this content is posted and circulated. So these intermediaries now come under the regulations, and if there is non compliance, if they don't comply with these regulations, the safe harbor can be removed, meaning these companies and their executives could be held criminally liable under Indian law. They will even face the possibility of arrest if they don't comply with these provisions. So safe harbor now is conditional. Previously, it was extended as a right to the IT industry. So now, under the new IT rules, safe harbor provision is a conditional provision provided. And if they don't comply with all these security regulations and guidelines, safe harbor provision can be withdrawn. And these companies and their executives can be held criminally accountable. So, as per these guidelines, the intermediaries were expected to have registered officers in India. They should have a compliance officer, grievance redressal officer. There should be a point of contact where police, law enforcement, and courts can engage with these companies and issue notices and get any objectionable content taken down. There were clear takedown guidelines that were issued. If any objectionable content is flagged by police and law enforcement or court orders are issued, then strict timelines were given within which these objectionable posts were to be taken down. They're also mandated to share data with police and law enforcement if there are valid cases coming up in order to prevent a crime or to deal with a law and order situation, to deal with threats to national security. The police and law enforcement, with the backing of court orders, they can force the companies to share data, even block content and block user accounts. So, this extraordinary power is now vested with the government. These rules also generated a lot of controversy and criticism because this extraordinary power could be easily misused as well. Primarily by the ruling party in power, it could be misused to target any dissent, criticism, and opposition. So, any articles by journalists, by activists, by opposition entities, if they are critical of the government in power, what if the authorities misinterpret them and use the discretion they have to take down such posts and block such content? So, this could be a threat to the fundamental right guaranteed under Article 19. It could be a threat to free speech and expression, and that has been a constant concern. But however, over the last few years, we have seen the implementation and enforcement of these regulations, and social media firms, digital media entities, OTT platforms, and online gaming platforms, they've all been covered under the ambit. The regulations are slightly relaxed for OTT platforms, with a three-tiered mechanism being created to regulate and certify the content on OTT platforms. For digital media, where right to free press has to be protected, again, very limited regulation has been provided. More of self-regulation has been provided over here. But for social media intermediaries, very strict regulations with clear timelines for takedown of content, and as well as clear obligations have been placed on them. Now, when you look at synthetic AI or artificially generated content through AI algorithms, the menace of deep fakes is something that has been worrying experts from many years. It's nothing new. The use of deep fakes could be easily used to enable the spread of fake news, misinformation, or to defame someone, or to harm the dignity of a person. Especially women and children would be all the more vulnerable. Then it could even be used to create security threats to the state. Hyper realistic content, which looks absolutely real and genuine, is something which can be used to mislead voters, to manipulate voter opinions and choices. It could be used to destabilize democracies, incite riots, trigger civil wars, and even increase the polarization in the society. So, multiple threats exist with regard to deepfakes and synthetic generated content. That's why such media is now being brought under the regulation of IT rules. So, with this amendment, the government is clearly defining what constitutes synthetically generated information. So, AI generated images and videos through algorithmic generation, they all get covered under the definition of the IT rules. Now, social media firms and the tech companies and AI companies, they come under the regulations over here. Now, they have to mandatorily create some features on their platforms where users will have to provide a declaration when they are posting a AI generated photo or a video. Some of you might have already seen this feature to be existing on platforms like Instagram, X, and others. When you're about to post anything on social media, there is a clear notice which is given to you. Is this content AI generated or is it modified using AI algorithms? You need to voluntarily declare this. So this feature already exists. In fact, some of the social media firms, they already use sophisticated in-house algorithms to automatically detect AI content. They even label them and flag them as AI generated content. So now the government is streamlining this through a legal mandate. So going forward, every social media firm, especially the large social media intermediaries, which have more than 5 million subscribers, they will be obligated to provide this provision where content being uploaded, if it is artificially generated or altered, there should be a clear user declaration which should be provided as a feature, and the users will have a duty to select this option to clearly highlight that this is AI content. And these companies should create in house mechanisms, use automated algorithms to detect AI content, label them, and flag them, and ensure that this flag is displayed to other users clearly. So that when you're looking at a generated photo or a image or a visual which is hyper realistic through AI generation, if the label is very clearly visible, you will know that it's a deep fake. You'll know that it's AI content, it's synthetic content, it's not real. So these two mandates are being placed on social media firms. So the whole purpose here is to counter the misuse of deep fakes. See, deep fakes per se are not illegal or not harmful, but it can be misused. So to deal with those challenges of spread of fake news and misinformation, the intention to harm someone, to affect someone's dignity or defame someone, or to threaten national security and law and order. So these are the objectives which the government is trying to meet. Now, when you look at the material which is already present on social media, right? There are different types of synthetic content. There could be movie clips where VFX and CGI has been heavily used, and some of it could be generated through AI algorithms. Or even all your smartphones, they automatically apply filters, right? And it gives a slight touch up to your photos and videos. So there is an element of synthetic content involved in that. So such content gets an exemption under the definition of synthetically generated information. There are few exemptions which are provided as well. So the automatic filter application by your phones when you take photos and videos, and inbuilt AI tools which slightly touch up your photos and videos, they are exempted. So these guidelines will not apply to that. It doesn't apply for movie VFX and CGI, which could be generated using AI algorithms. They are exempted. Apart from that, any other content will get classified as synthetically generated information. Now, what other mechanisms are available here to detect and deal with AI content? See, at a global level, there is a set of standards that AI platforms have come out with in order to identify a hyper realistic content and label them and flag them. So, there is a global coalition known as the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. Please make a note of this. This can come as a prelims question. The C2PA. The C2PA is a non profit entity. It's a coalition of AI and tech companies essentially. It is based out of Washington. So the C2PA comes out with global standards which most of the AI and tech companies, they are following these standards when it comes to AI content. So as per the standards, they are already attaching labels and flagging such AI content which other platforms will be able to recognize. Now, let's say you used a tool like ChatGPT or any other sophisticated generative AI tool to create an artificial image or to create a synthetically generated video. Now, you may not see it on the face of it, right, from the UI side on the front end, but behind there would be a label, a flag placed on that content. When you upload that photo or video on, let's say, WhatsApp or Instagram or any other social media platform, those platforms will automatically detect those labels and it will flag that as AI content. So this happens completely on the back end. So the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity, the C2PA, is a Washington based nonprofit entity that brings AI and tech companies together to set these global standards on how to label AI content. So whenever you use any AI platform to generate synthetic content, on the back end, the label and flag is already added. So when you upload this content, right, the users can't manipulate this, right? Unless you're really technically skilled, you can't really manipulate the labels and flags which are added. So once you upload this on any platform, those platforms will read the label and immediately they'll flag it as AI content. So this standardization is something the government is trying to bring in. Many big companies are already doing it. As I said, those features are already present. And now the government is trying to streamline it and give it a legal mandate. Now, coming to the deadlines for taking down objectionable content. Who can issue takedown notices? Who has the authority to issue those takedown notices? What's the time limit or deadline given to the companies to remove such content? So, previously, under the old guidelines of IT rules, social media firms they had a very long timeline. They would get anywhere between 24 to 36 hours for some type of content, especially for posts involving nudity, child pornography, or extremely harmful content. The deadline was around 24 hours. For some user flagged reports, the timeline was almost up to 2 weeks, right? So anywhere between 24 hours to 2 weeks was the overall deadline, which was previously given by the IT rules. Now this time limit has been drastically reduced. It is coming down to just 2 to 3 hours for certain objectionable posts. So when a takedown notice is issued by the police and law enforcement or through court orders, for certain cases like rape videos or any content having nudity, any content which is defaming someone, content which could be harmful for the dignity of women, or which is spreading child pornography, such content will have to be now taken down within a period of 2 to 3 hours. It's a very strict deadline because the government has realized uh, over the last 4 5 years of implementing IT rules that these companies are taking their own sweet time. Even if they can take down the request within a day, they're taking almost 2 to 3 days because the previous rules allowed them an extra time limit. So now, with the technological advances, it's quite easy to quickly take down such content which is objectionable. So the authorities who are designated under IT rule, police, law enforcement agencies, and based on court orders, within 2 to 3 hours, such content flagged by the authorities or through court orders will have to be taken down by these platforms. It's a very strict deadline on them. If they don't follow, then there will be consequences, meaning they will lose the safe harbor provision and the company executives in India can be tried and arrested under the law. Then, for other information, such as information which is designed to harm someone's reputation, to defame someone, or to spread misinformation, the timeline has now been reduced from the earlier 2 weeks to just 1 week. In 7 days, they have to take down such content. Then, with regard to user flagged reports, I'm sure you might have seen on social media, as users, you can flag some content. The companies, they acknowledge your grievance. They look into your complaint. And if it goes against their community standards and the IT rules, they will tell you whether they're taking it down or it will be allowed to remain on the platform. So this deadline is now back down to just 36 hours from the earlier 72 hours. So such strict deadlines have been provided to ensure quick action. Now coming to the terms and conditions these companies are supposed to provide to their users. The government is now mandating that frequent and periodic reminders have to be sent to the users. If you remember, once in a while you do get this reminder from all the social media firms that the terms and conditions are changing and you need to provide your approval for that. Right? This usually happens once a year. Once in a year, right now, social media firms, they are obligated under the law to show you the platform's terms and conditions, get your consent. So this will now change to every 3 months. The users will be notified about the legal changes. Basically, you should be aware of the legal consequences you will face in case you violate the law of the land. Right? The legal consequences should be made very clear, and the user consent will have to be obtained for this. When you're using platforms such as Instagram and X and others and posting content on it, right? You should know what are the compliance standards expected from the user as well. So periodic reminders will be sent by these platforms once every quarter, showing the entire community guidelines and terms and conditions and government rules and regulations. It will basically inform that if you are in violation of these standards, you will be held liable for it. and the data regarding your account can be shared with police and law enforcement. You could even face arrest and legal consequences. So this warning will be clearly displayed once in every quarter. So these are the big changes the government has brought out. But of course, the concern remains that what if these provisions, these extraordinary powers, are misused by the authorities? What if the ruling party tries to target dissent, opposition, any sort of criticism against the government by using these extraordinary powers? So, is this an attack on free speech and expression? Is it an attack on free press? So, let me know what you think about this. Do we need such stringent rules, or should there be better checks and balances? Can the government itself be the enforcer of these rules, or should we have an independent ombudsman, or authority which is independent of the government, which should be enforcing these regulations? Let me know what you think in the comments, and please take up this mains question for your answer writing practice. So I hope this topic is clear. It's a very important topic under cybersecurity, under GS paper 3 of internal security. Now, moving on page 10, we have a very interesting article today related to geography and environment and ecology. This article is based on a recent scientific study, which has been published in a very well known scientific journal. So I feel this topic can be very useful for environment, ecology, and geography for both prelims and mains. So let's go a little deep into this topic. There was a latest research conducted on the water flow, the annual water flow in the Indus River Basin and the Gangetic River Basin. The researchers have compared the data. They have basically monitored the rainfall and precipitation in these two critical drainage basins. They've also tracked the groundwater levels and the flow of water in the rivers that are present in these basins. So, using all this data, they have compiled the changes that have taken place from 1980 to 2021. How water flow has changed in the Indus Basin and in the Ganga River Basin. And there are some interesting conclusions that the researchers have come to. And this is not just a one off study, right? It's a study which has been peer reviewed by researchers across the world. So it has scientific weightage behind it. Now, when you look at the Indus and the Ganga River Basin, these are probably two of the most important and critical river systems of the world. If you look at the Ganga River Basin, in the Gangetic River Basin, we have nearly 600 billion people just in India dependent on the Ganga and its tributaries. In the Ganga River Basin, I'm not even taking Nepal into account. Just in India, close to 60 crore people, which is nearly 40 to 45% of our population, they are dependent on the waters of the Ganga. That is the extent of dependency. This is where the civilization, the ancient Indian civilization flourished, and it's a densely populated region, primarily because of the water availability here. It's a key agrarian belt, an industrial belt as well, primarily because of the water availability. When you look at the Indus, which is largely shared between India and Pakistan, right? The Indus is absolutely essential for nearly 300 million people. Compared to the Ganga basin, here the dependency is around half of it. So both in India, Pakistan, cumulatively around 30 crore people in the region, in Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, and on the Pakistani side. Cumulatively, around 300 million people are dependent on it. Agriculture is entirely dependent on it. So you can understand the importance of both the drainage basins, both Indus and Ganga. Both are equally important, Ganga being much more important than the Indus. But today, excessive water exploitation, water mismanagement, and anthropogenic activities, and as well as global warming and climate change, they are driving changes in the water flow in the drainage basins. So now we have more scientific data to pinpoint the changes which are happening to annual water flow in the Indus and the Ganga River Basin. So according to this study, which was published in Earth's Future, it's a very well known, renowned scientific publication in the world of geography and environment and ecology. So according to this research published in the Earth's Future, the annual water flow in the Indus Basin has increased by 8%. Please make a note of this. The annual water flow in the Indus River Basin has gone up by around 8% over a period of 3 decades, from around 1980 to 2021. In comparison, in the Ganga River Basin, the annual water flow has reduced by a alarming 17%. In the Ganga River basin, there is a reduction in the annual water flow by around 17%, which is a very big red flag. Given the number of people dependent on it, the major cause for concern. Then in the Indus basin, you see an improvement in water flow, increase in water flow by around 8%. But however, there is a cause for concern for India. The research has pointed out that in the Indus basin, on the Pakistani side, especially in the Jhelum and Chenab, this is where the water flow has largely increased. Whereas on the Indian side, particularly in Punjab, in the Ravi River and Satluj, there is a significant decline which has been noted. Though across Indus Basin, there is an overall increase in annual water flow by 8%. On the Indian side, in Ravi and Satluj, there is a significant drop in the water flow, which has been registered. Water flow in the Chelab and Jhelum has increased on the Pakistani side, meaning Pakistan has greater water availability compared to the water availability on the Indian side. Now, this has serious implications for the Indus Water Treaty, which has already been the at the source of tensions between India and Pakistan, right? So this is what we need to understand through this article. Now let's first talk about the Indus Basin alone. When you look at the Indus Water Treaty of 1960, it was mediated by the World Bank between India and Pakistan, and it provided for a relatively fair distribution of waters between India and Pakistan. But over the years, India has felt that the terms of the treaty is against India's interests. In fact, for many years, there has been a debate in India, should we weaponize the treaty and use this to punish Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism against India? But until last year, India had withheld on this temptation. So, under the treaty, the Indus Basin is divided clearly into two regions. You have the western rivers on the Pakistani side, consisting of Indus, Jhelum, and Chenab, which are largely assigned to Pakistan. Then we have the eastern rivers on the Indian side, largely allocated to India, which includes Ravi, Bias, and Satluj. The eastern rivers largely allocated to India, and the western rivers largely allocated to Pakistan. So last year, after the Pahalgam attack, when India decided to retaliate with military options using Operation Sindoor, India also resorted to coercive diplomacy, right? We cut down trade and diplomatic ties, and we even weaponized the Indus Water Treaty. Now, India has suspended all its obligations under the Indus Water Treaty. India has even started making plans to increase the water carrying capacity of the dams on the Indian side, increase the water utilization on the eastern rivers to fully utilize what has been allocated to India. Now, Pakistan is already alarmed by this prospect. In the future, India even plans to build dams as it wants, even if it were to violate the provisions of Indus Water Treaty. And this is something which could affect the water flow in the downstream into Pakistan. So the Indus Water Treaty and the sharing of Indus waters is already at the source of dispute between India and Pakistan. But even before Pahalgam attack, even before India suspended its obligations under Indus Water Treaty, India had been pressing upon Pakistan to review the treaty in the context of climate change, especially since 2017. For the last 7, 8 years, from 2017 to almost 2023, 24, India had been pressing upon Pakistan to review the Indus Water Treaty because water flow is changing in these six rivers because of climate change and global warming. The implications are very clearly visible on the ground. So now the data clearly points that on the eastern side in Ravi and Satluj, the water flow has dropped very drastically. Whereas on the Pakistani side, in Jhelum and Chenab, water flow has increased. And this is something which should be accounted for in any water sharing treaty. So this again highlights India's rightful demand to review and update the Indus Water Treaty, which existed before the Pahalgam attack. Of course, after Pahalgam attack, India suspended its participation in the treaty itself. Right? India says it's no longer obligated by the provisions of the treaty. So changes in water flow will of course will have implications for water management and sharing of transboundary rivers. That is why this development is very important. Now, coming to the Ganga basin, why there is a significant drop here, whereas on the Indus side, there is a significant jump, especially on the Pakistani side. Now, what could be the reasons behind it? The study has established that Western disturbances and as well as the changes happening to monsoons, they are primarily responsible for the increased water flow in the Indus basin. Western disturbances, which is a very unique weather phenomena linked to changes happening in the Mediterranean Sea, right? It brings the moist currents from the Mediterranean across West Asia, South Asia, and eventually brings heavy rainfall and during specific periods of the year to northwestern parts of India, right? Western disturbances and as well as ongoing changes in monsoon cycles. This is bringing more rainfall to Jhelum and Chenab and in the catchment areas, increasing the water flow. This is increasing water flow on the Indian side as well. But problem is in states like Punjab, where there is heavy dependency on Ravi and Satluj for irrigation, the excessive overutilization of groundwater is affecting the water flow. That's why you see a reduction, a big fall in water flow on the Indian side. Though more rainfall is occurring, rainfall has increased. The persistent high levels of irrigation and pumping of water from the groundwater table, right? And utilization of even the river water for irrigation is something which is affecting water flow on the Indian side. Whereas if you look at the Ganga basin, the main reason for the drop here is excessive irrigation and groundwater exploitation, the over exploitation of the groundwater table. Please understand, groundwater feeds your rivers as well. Just like surface water percolates and recharges the groundwater table, right? Groundwater also feeds your rivers through underground channels and aquifers. So when there is excessive overutilization of groundwater for irrigation, this affects that natural connection that exists between your rivers and the groundwater table. In fact, at some places along the Yamuna and Ganga, the research has pointed out that the flow direction of groundwater and river water has completely reversed. And it has resulted in a scenario where river water is draining into the groundwater table. Usually, it would be the other way around, where groundwater eventually feeds the rivers as well. But the change in the direction and the reversing of the direction of the flow of groundwater and river flow, it has led to river water entering into the groundwater table, reducing the surface water flow. So, such changes have been noted in this study. And the researchers have pointed out that 50 to 70% of annual river flow in Ganga basin is contributed by groundwater. So, if groundwater is being over exploited for irrigation and for other human activities, naturally you will see a significant reduction. And the reduction in water flow, which is by around 17%, it's primarily attributed to over exploitation of groundwater. 60 to 80% of the drop is basically as a result of the groundwater extraction, which is happening in the Gangetic River basin. So, this tells us a very clear lesson. In the future, in the coming months and years, water management has to be integrated. Generally, in water management, there is separate focus on groundwater management, separate focus on managing rivers and surface flow. You can't treat them as separate entities. They are connected, they are interconnected. And not just anthropogenic activities, even the naturally occurring cycle of climate change would also drive these changes. And human activities have simply accelerated them. So it's important to develop a holistic view and understanding of these connections and plan for a more comprehensive water management mechanism where we conserve and protect our surface water and groundwater. If we have to ensure water availability and water security, that too in highly densely populated regions like the Gangetic Basin, it is extremely critical to integrate the management of surface water and groundwater. That is the lesson we can take away from this research. So please take up this mains question for your answer writing practice. Now let's move on to the next topic. Just yesterday, we spoke about the deployment of the world's largest aircraft carrier by the United States towards Iran, USS Gerald Ford, which until recently was in the Caribbean. It was primarily used in the action against Venezuela. It had been diverted towards the Mediterranean, and now it's all set to enter the West Asia region, right? So now let's analyze these developments which are happening, the rising tensions between US and Iran. Just yesterday, I pointed out that initially President Trump was threatening Iran with war at the starting of the year, in the month of January, primarily because of the protests that were happening in Iran. Right? That was the excuse of the United States. The US was threatening Iran with military consequences if Iran targeted civilian protesters. And on these grounds, US carried out a military reorientation and mobilization and increased the presence and deployment across West Asia. And the US operates multiple military bases in this region. So it brought more assets, more troops, and resources, which clearly sent out a message to Iran that a war could be imminent. In fact, according to reports, in mid January 2026, a war was about to get triggered, and probably US was just hours away from launching strikes on Iran. At the last minute, West Asian powers intervened. Saudi Arabia, UAE, even Oman, which is now acting as a mediator between US and Iran, and Qatar, they exerted tremendous pressure on the US, right? Even Bahrain, Jordan, because they all have some influence on the US as they are hosting several American military bases in the region. Take, for example, the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. It's a key forward staging area for American operations. Or look at the Central Command of the US Navy, the Fifth Fleet, based out of Bahrain. That's where the headquarters of the Combined Maritime Forces, the CMF, is also located, which is led by the US Navy. So Bahrain has allowed such big American naval presence. In Jordan, you have a massive air base, the Muwafaq Salti Air Base, where a lot of American air assets are deployed. So these governments, of course, have that influence on US as well. Plus the trade linkages, the oil connection they have, and in general the friendly ties they have enjoyed gives them certain influence with the White House. So they all pulled back US at the last minute, which essentially ensured the war was prevented at the last minute. Because they warned US any attack on Iran could easily spiral out of control and it could turn into a much bigger regional conflict. While Israel, on the other hand, was egging US to go to war, and it was preparing on its own as well to join any American military campaign, because Israel would like to see the toppling of the Iranian regime because of their intense rivalry, right? So while these developments were playing out, parallelly, the US started changing its track from the issue being about Iran's protests. Now it has shifted towards Iran's nuclear program and the talks which are going on between US and Iran. So Oman, as I told you, is mediating between US and Iran over the nuclear weapons program. Previously, Donald Trump had exited the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action back in 2018, the Iran nuclear deal, as it was called. It was basically shattered by the US and it reimposed crippling sanctions on Iran. That's what pushed Iran to go back to enriching uranium again and violating the provisions of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. So, since then, tensions have increased between these two countries, and there has been a possibility of a war breaking out between them. Israel, on the other hand, which considers Iran's nuclear program as a existential threat, has been waiting for an opportunity like this to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. Last year, if you remember, both Israel and US carried out coordinated strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities on centrifuge plants, which, according to reports, has caused significant damage to the nuclear capabilities of Iran. But the current talks which are going on, if it doesn't progress as expected, if Trump doesn't get a favorable deal, right, then there is still a possibility of a conflict breaking out. Right now, even Switzerland has entered this equation. Switzerland, which is considered as a neutral country, Switzerland has a stated policy of geopolitical neutrality. It offers itself as a neutral location for mediation and talks as well. So, through Oman, US and Iran are talking to each other. Next week, fresh round of talks are set to take place in Switzerland, in Geneva, which is even considered as a peace capital, right? Because a lot of UN bodies are headquartered over here. And Switzerland offers itself, especially Geneva, as a ground for negotiations, even between hostile powers. So, through Oman's leadership in Switzerland, in Geneva, these talks are set to take place. And this will hold the key to avoid a war or to start a deadly war in the region. Now, just look at the American military presence here. The US has very formidable presence. It has nearly 50,000 soldiers already stationed across West Asia, surrounding Iran from all the sides. It has nearly 17 military bases with many more allied bases present in this region. So now, along with USS Abraham Lincoln, which was already deployed a month ago, USS Gerald Ford also has joined this region, and across the Mediterranean, Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, and Hormuz Strait, the US has completely surrounded Iran from all sides with massive military assets. The Lincoln Strike Group, which is led by USS Abraham Lincoln, a very large aircraft carrier. It consists of an entire carrier battle group comprising of multiple advanced fighter jets, the F-18s and F-35s. It is accompanied by guided missile destroyers and submarines and support vessels and tanker fleets. Then, if you look at the airbase in Jordan at the Muwafaq Salti Air Base, advanced F-35 strike fighters have been positioned over here in a ready to be deployed position. In the Mediterranean and Hormuz, and in the Persian Gulf, and as well as in the Red Sea, multiple naval assets have been positioned with sufficient cruise missiles, the Tomahawk cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. US has even deployed advanced air defense across the region from the THAAD to Patriot systems to deter any Iranian aggression. Right. Apart from this, the USS Gerald Ford, it's the world's largest aircraft carrier. And again, it's a flotilla, an entire armada of naval vessels comprising of missile destroyers, corvettes, and support vessels, which can cause significant lethal damage to any country. So Gerald Ford is now moving into this region with the entire fleet, and US drones have been pre-positioned across bases in this region, from UAE to Qatar to Bahrain to Jordan. So the MQ-9 drones and electronic warfare equipment, even the Brawler fighter jets, which are capable of deep penetration strikes. And reportedly, if required, strategic bombers can also be brought into the picture to carry out deep penetration strikes, especially in mountainous areas where Iran's nuclear facilities are hidden underground. So, this extent of mobilization is quite alarming. And it suggests that if the talks in Switzerland, in Geneva, were to fail next week, something disastrous might happen in the region. Trump has just stated 2 days ago, in a very casual manner, that he would be more than happy to topple the Ayatollah's regime in Iran. Any such American misadventure would be met with very strong resistance from Iran, though Iran has been considerably weakened. It has lost all its proxies, be it Hamas, Hezbollah, and even the Houthis in Yemen. They've all been almost decimated, weakened, and wiped out by Israel's military action in coordination with US and allies. So Iran is at its weakest right now, but still, Iran has formidable strength to cause significant damage to Israeli American interests and even the interests of the Sunni powers. Right? Iran will choose to strike at Qatar or Bahrain or Jordan, which are hosting American bases. And Iran has made this very, very clear. Last year as well, when US airstrikes were carried out, Iran carried out a symbolic strike on the Al Udeid air base in Qatar. But this time, if US were to go out all in with Israel, right, Iran would also not hold back, and it could easily result in one of the biggest escalations we have seen in the region. And this is something which could spill over. It could cripple the trade routes, shipments, oil markets, and it's something which could affect the stability of the entire region and affect India's interests significantly. This is one of the hot topics and developments that you should be tracking. Right, the talks coming up in next week in Geneva would be of extreme importance because this mobilization is a clear sign that US is exerting all possible pressure, military and diplomatic. And if the talks were to fail, US is most likely to strike Iran, and the aim is to topple the regime itself. And if it comes to the survival of the regime, the Iranian regime would probably do anything, they'll go to any extent to cause significant damage to others as well. It's a very volatile situation that we have right now in West Asia. Coming to the next topic, the government is considering a law to reverse the judgment of the Supreme Court with regard to IPS deputations into Central Armed Police Forces. This is the topic in news. See, last year, if you remember, I have covered this topic. The Supreme Court had issued an order directing the Home Ministry to progressively reduce the deputation of IPS officers into senior ranks in Central Armed Police Forces. Now, what are these central armed police forces? See, the Home Ministry, which is responsible for internal security, it's also responsible for border management, border security. It has raised its own set of armed police forces or paramilitary forces, essentially. Right? They lie somewhere between your armed forces and your police forces. They're like a good fusion, a good mix of policing methods and techniques and equipment with the discipline and the advanced equipment of the military. So paramilitary forces serve a very unique purpose, and the MHA officially recognizes these paramilitary forces of India as central armed police forces. So we have few border guarding forces which are dedicated for border security, such as Assam Rifles, for example, which is primarily used in northeast India to secure the India-Myanmar border. And it is also deployed in counter-insurgency roles along with Indian Army in areas where AFSPA is implemented. To counter northeast insurgency, it's placed under the command of Indian Army, though it's under the Home Ministry, and it takes part in counter-insurgency operations as well in the northeast. But as a border guarding force, its role is to guard India-Myanmar border. Then you have the BSF, the world's largest border guarding force, responsible for securing India's borders with Pakistan and Bangladesh. Then we have the Central Industrial Security Force, CISF, which you see across your airports, Delhi Metro, which is responsible for protecting India's critical infrastructure. So it's deployed at sensitive government buildings, military bases. It protects important installations of DRDO, ISRO, airports, dams, nuclear plants, mines. All such industrial facilities are guarded by the CISF. Then we have the CRPF, the Central Reserve Police Force, which is the primary anti-Naxal force of the center. So CRPF battalions, including the Cobra Special Forces, are deployed in Naxal-affected states like Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh to combat Naxalism. And CRPF can be deployed in any other part of the country as well. Right? They are deployed in Jammu and Kashmir in an internal security role to maintain law and order. Sometimes they're deployed in Northeast India as well. For example, in Manipur to handle the law and order situation. Right? So CRPF has a very versatile role. Then you have ITBP, Indo-Tibetan Border Police, deployed to guard the border with China in coordination with Indian Army and act as a second line of defense along the disputed Himalayan border. Then we have the elite Black Cats or the NSG Commandos, the National Security Guards, which is an elite counterterrorism unit. It specializes in anti-hijack and anti-hostage situations and urban combat, close quarter battles in the urban environment. Then you have SSB, the Sashastra Seema Bal, which is a border guarding force responsible for securing the borders with Bhutan and Nepal. So these CAPFs, they have their own cadre at the lower and middle level. At the lower and middle level, they have their own cadre. They recruit on their own, they train them, they get promoted within the organization. But at the highest leadership level, coming to ranks such as Inspector General or the rank of DIG, these ranks are often given away to IPS officers from the Indian Police Service who belong to the Group A cadre. Whereas CAPF officers who grow within the organization, their promotion opportunities get restricted and limited because the leadership roles, the vacancies get filled up by IPS officers on deputation. Now, this is an organizational problem which has affected the functioning of CAPFs from a very long time. This happens with our intelligence agencies as well. Take, for example, RAW and IB. Though they have their own cadre at the lower and middle level, it's usually the IPS officers who dominate at the highest leadership level, both in RAW and IB. And this often creates a conflict with regard to promotions and key postings. And it also affects the functioning of the organization as well. Because when lower and mid level officers don't have the motivation to grow, when they know that their career path is limited, that IPS officers will come from the outside, they'll serve for 2, 3 years and they'll go away. They will lack the expertise as well. They will not build domain experience. And this has been a fundamental structural problem with our security and intelligence agencies, right? And this also establishes the IPS lobby, which is opposed by CAPFs and even by the native cadres of our intelligence agencies. You often don't find this in any other major country. Other major powers, they always focus on their in-house cadres and create opportunities for them to rise to the top. That builds domain experience, creates motivation. But in India, there is an elite cadre and you have the regular cadre at the bottom. So IPS, which has cornered all these key positions, has faced stiff opposition, and retired CAPF officers, they had filed a case at the Supreme Court. So last year, in this particular case, Supreme Court had intervened. It had ordered the MHA to stop this practice. and progressively reduce IPS deputation. It can't be done immediately, of course, right? So Supreme Court gave a timeline that in next 2 years, you're going to reduce the IPS deputations at IG, DIG level progressively, bring it down to almost zero, and ensure that in-house officers will grow to these ranks. Of course, it has been met with resistance from the government, from the Home Ministry, and from the IPS lobby. So they filed a review petition, which was discarded by Supreme Court, saying this order is final. So now the government is considering a law so that it can counter this judgment of the Supreme Court to preserve the IPS dominance. So this remains a controversial issue, and it leads to inter-service rivalry as well between IPS and the native cadres of these forces. So let me know what is your view on this. Should IPS officers be appointed on deputation like this? Or should we focus on developing domain expertise and specialization? And instead of using generalists, should we really build expertise? Is that what is needed for India? Or should we continue with this age old practice or traditional practice? Let me know your views in the comments. Next, a quick update, again related to the world of social media. Meta, which is the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, it has announced a big change with regard to fact checking. See, social media firms, they started recruiting and hiring fact checking units or companies or fact checking contractors who could essentially keep a check on fake news and any misinformation. From 2016, 2017 onwards, companies like Meta started this practice where they would pay freelancers or small fact checking companies which provide these services. They were taken on contract. Facebook would pay them, share a part of the ad revenue with these fact checking companies, and they would carry out this diligence work. Right? They would exercise vigilance across the platform, look out for fake news or any user flagged reports. So when you report any post, it would go to these fact checking teams, and they would actually manually check them against community standards. This was a key system of checks and balance to keep a check on the spread of fake news. But Meta, which has been under a lot of pressure under the Trump administration, it has started making a lot of changes. After Trump came to power in the United States, Meta stopped the fact checking process entirely. It stopped paying these fact checking companies and the freelancers, and it has come to a complete stop because, as you know, Trump administration doesn't care about facts, right? And they have basically pressurized Meta in a way, indirectly, of course, and Meta has completely stopped the fact checking program in the US market. Now it is trying to replicate this across the world, and they are looking to cut down the payments for fact checking companies which are focusing on the Indian market. Now, a study conducted by the Hindu had carried out research on this. It had clearly shown that when you have fact checking teams, it is much more effective in curbing the menace of fake news. This was a duty of companies like Meta. It's not that they were doing charity with this payment, right? By sharing a part of the ad revenue with the fact checking companies, they were fulfilling their obligation to curb fake news. So now, if Meta were to extend this policy across the world, if it were to cut the payments and stop these contracts, not only these companies will shut down and all the employees will get fired, it will essentially allow for the free flow of fake information. See, in the US, what they did was when they stopped the fact checking units from last year onwards, they've introduced a new feature called community notes. So if you log into Meta platforms in the US, you will see this feature called community notes, where in every post, the users can add notes to it, like an annotation. Let's say you created a video on climate change, for example, right? Maybe you are expressing your view. So users who have a problem with your view, let's say a follower of Trump who believes climate change is a hoax, they will add a community note saying climate change is a hoax. But someone who believes in scientific rationality can counter that individual by adding their own counterpoints and build a series of notes, something like Reddit, which is added on to each and every post. So Facebook believes this is a better feature because it gives a voice for everyone, for someone from different ideology. Everybody will get a voice to express their views, and then user will take what they want, right? So this feature was added. Now it's believed that Meta is probably looking to experiment with community notes even in the Indian market. So maybe they'll cut the payments and eventually stop fact checking happening in the Indian market, and they will introduce the feature of community notes. But according to the Hindu, this could have implications because research has shown that independent fact checkers have always been much more effective and efficient to tackle the menace of fake news. Next, there is a very interesting article which will help us understand India's subsea cable network. Subsea cables today, they are the backbone of the global internet infrastructure. In fact, for any country, the submarine cables, they have become part of the critical infrastructure today. This is the backbone of your internet. Much of the internet, right? It flows under seas, under oceans. There are these massive submarine cables that connect countries and continents. And in India, it's Bharti Airtel, which has a dominant pole position in this sector. You also have Reliance and few public sector entities as well, but the primary role is played by a company called Bharti Airtel. So when you look at India's internet market and India's internet infrastructure and networks, there are a total of 17 major subsea cable networks. There are 17 which are largely privately owned, except for the one by BSNL. Right, most of the cable networks of Airtel, Reliance, and other service providers. In total, there are around 17 major subsea cable networks, and they all land at important locations on our coastal areas. The most important landing station is in Mumbai. This is a key internet gateway for India. This is where critical submarine cables head towards West Asia, Europe, and Africa, and also towards Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Then the second most important submarine landing point is Chennai, from where cables head out towards Southeast Asia and the Pacific region. Then we also have other cities like Tuticorin, Cochin, and Trivandrum, which also act as minor hubs for subsea cables. Now, this entire domain of subsea cable infrastructure is regulated by the TRAI, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. So, for any company to lay the subsea cables, they have to get a license from India. If any subsea cable has to pass through Indian territorial waters, which is within 12 nautical miles of India's coastline, then they have to obtain a license from Department of Telecommunication. So please remember the regulations here. This could come as a prelims question. The licensing for subsea cables to be laid in India's territorial waters is issued by DOT, and regulations are laid down by the TRAI, which is the regulator for the entire telecom industry. So in India, 17 such cables have come up, with the main landing stations located in Mumbai and Chennai, which are the internet gateways of India, and minor stations located in Kochi, Tuticorin, and Trivandrum. Right now, the bandwidth capability is in the range of 111 to 138 Tbps. This capacity of Indian subsea cables is way behind the capacity of developed countries. We are at least 5 times behind in terms of bandwidth and internet speed. This is even after the rollout of 5G networks in India. So, this again shows India is grossly unprepared for the AI revolution. If you have to pioneer AI models and AI tools, you need very high internet bandwidth, right? But you can argue this is about external connectivity to other countries, to rest of the global internet. But still, in a connected world, right? Even if you develop domestic models, you would need access to the global networks as well. So with such low speed internet, you can't really hope to become a AI powerhouse. If you compare this with China, Japan, or Israel, US, right? These leading powers, their bandwidth capacity is many, many times higher than that of India. So right now, Bharti Airtel has announced addition of new capacity to the tune of 220 Tbps. Is that clear? It has a cable network of more than 4 lakh kilometers, connecting nearly 5 continents and 50 countries. So this company is the biggest player as far as the subsea market is concerned. That's why Airtel is urging India to make some policy corrections and changes. It is urging the government to recognize this key sector as essential services as part of critical infrastructure, so that it becomes easy to get licenses, permissions from government agencies. It will bring better support from government entities, and it will help in faster deployment. And companies like Airtel, Reliance, they're asking for tax concessions because laying subsea cables is capital intensive, requires huge amount of capital investment. Technologically also it's quite challenging. So they're asking for tax cuts, reduction in customs duty, so that this can become an incentive for the industry to step up India's subsea cable network, which is critical for expanding our bandwidth capacity. Clear? We also have domestic subsea cables which connect Chennai and Andaman Nicobar and Kochi and Lakshadweep. These are the domestic subsea cables which connect our island territories to mainland. So from Chennai to Andaman, there is a subsea cable running, and from Kochi to Lakshadweep, there is a subsea cable running, which provides for domestic connectivity. So please remember these basic facts, especially for your prelims. Now, coming to the prelim section, just three articles for today. So we will wrap it up in few minutes. The government of India has rolled out a very ambitious scheme. A new scheme has been launched by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs to provide for a transformation in urban governance. This new scheme, known as the Urban Challenge Fund, it has been labeled as the most audacious transformative attempt by the government of India to transform urban infrastructure and governance in the country. So, Urban Challenge Fund, rolled out by Ministry of Home and Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, it will be a centrally sponsored scheme, meaning center will bear a part of the burden, with states sharing a part of the burden, and rest of it being taken up by the markets. It's a market linked program which encourages private participation. So under the Urban Challenge Fund, the goal is to mobilize 4 lakh crore rupees over a period of 5 years, be implemented from 2025-26 financial year to 2030-31. There is a opportunity to extend it if required till 2033-2034. In this timeline, the government is hoping to mobilize 4 lakh crores, which is a massive investment. And 25% of this will come from Government of India. That is 1 lakh crore would be mobilized by the Indian government alone. Clear? Then private sector is expected to mobilize at least 50%. That's the minimum expectation from the private sector through market linked instruments such as municipal bonds or even through bank loans or through public private partnership. Through such market linked instruments, private sector is expected to mobilize 50% at least, which is around 2 lakh crores, with some funding coming from the states as well. So in total, the government is hoping to rope in around 4 lakh crore worth of investment over a period of 6 to 8 years roughly. And it aims to fund major infrastructure projects, urban rejuvenation projects across Indian cities. Now, let me tell you which Indian cities are covered. The coverage is also very important for your exam. It will cover all state capitals, not just metro cities. All state capitals are covered. All cities with a population of more than 1 million, even they are covered. Any city with a population of more than 10 lakh. So not only tier 1 cities, metro cities, even your tier 2, tier 3 cities, small towns, which could have a population of more than 1 million will get covered. So they are the primary focus of this new fund and scheme, which is being rolled out by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Then there is a parallel initiative for small towns, especially in the Himalayan and northeastern belt, small cities located in hilly states, in northeastern states, or cities with a population of less than 1 million. They will get support through the repayment scheme, credit repayment credit repayment guarantee scheme, which is run by the government of India. So here, the government of India will basically share the burden of the loans which are borrowed by the local bodies, the urban local bodies. So small hilly cities located in the Himalayan belt, small towns in northeast India. even other small cities with a population of less than 10 lakh. So they can borrow loans up to, let's say, 20 crores, 28 crores, 30 crores. Out of that, around 7 to 10 crores would be borne by the government of India. So the credit repayment guarantee scheme ensures that government will take a share of this loan and the center will subsidize this loan essentially. And municipal bodies, the local urban bodies, they will share the rest of the burden. So in principle, this scheme will cover almost every city in India, in principle. But the main focus, of course, is on all state capitals and any city with a population of more than a million. But even small towns and cities are not being neglected. They are being supported through the credit repayment guarantee scheme. So, with a total investment of 4 lakh crores, at least 50% coming from the markets, it will bring private capital, which is very crucial for urban development. The government is of the opinion that public sector alone can't meet the demands of urban governance in today's world. So there's a need to rope in private capital through such market-linked schemes. That's why municipal bonds are part of it. It'll encourage more bank borrowings, public-private partnerships, and government of India would pump 25% of the funding required. So this scheme could probably change the very face of urban governance in the country. Coming to the next topic from science and technology sector, there's a very interesting article based on a new research which identifies nitric oxide to be extremely useful to deal with drug resistant bacteria. See, in a hospital setting, today, one of the biggest concerns when it comes to fighting tuberculosis, very serious respiratory conditions, and pneumonia is the fear of drug resistant bacteria. Right? It has become widely prevalent, especially in developing countries, thanks to over abuse of antibiotics and poor hygiene. Bacteria have mutated, become more drug resistant, and it has almost reduced the effectiveness of first and second line of antibiotics. So, for many critical patients suffering from last stage pneumonia, right, there is no other option because no other drugs, medications would work. But one method which is known to provide results is the infusion of nitric oxide, high dose of inhalation of nitric oxide. It has proven to reduce the bacterial load by almost 90 to 99%. In controlled studies on various mammals, the usage of nitric oxide and the infusion, it is known to basically, dial up the size of the blood vessels, particularly in the lungs. The blood carrying capacity of the vessels in the lungs increases when there is a high dosage of nitric oxide infusion which is given. This is already used as a method in ICUs on critical patients suffering from last stage pneumonia. So, if this is used on a wider scale, this could probably help combat the threat posed by drug resistant bacteria. It is known to wipe out almost 99% of drug resistant bacteria which is lodged in the lungs, which is contributing to the severe case of pneumonia and respiratory infection. So this has been found out as a more effective technique, though it is used, but it is largely used only as a last stage option. But now research shows that it can be used even in the earlier stages to save more lives, and it could help in basically dilating the blood vessels in the lungs, increasing blood flow, and it could help in killing a large share of the bacteria which is causing the infection. Now, coming to the last topic for today, the Munich Security Conference is currently taking place, and it is mentioned in 2 to 3 articles in today's paper. There's one article where Dr. Jaishankar is also participating. It refers to some statements made by India's foreign minister. Then there's another article referring to what Zelensky has said while addressing the Munich Security Conference. Zelensky has spoken about how Russia has deliberately targeted Ukraine's energy infrastructure over the last decade as part of the ongoing war. See, since 2014, ever since Russia captured the Crimean Peninsula, and especially after 2022, after it invaded Ukraine and launched the full scale Ukraine war, since then, Russia has primarily taken aim at Ukraine's energy grids and infrastructure. It has targeted power plants with drone strikes. It has destroyed power grids. It has even launched crippling cyber attacks, especially ransomware attacks have been launched on critical infrastructure, controlling power plants and power grids. So, right now, Ukraine is facing the prospect of complete loss of electricity, which is seen as a very inhuman way of fighting a war. So this issue was brought up by Zelensky at the Munich Security Conference. Now, what we need to understand is what is the Munich Security Conference? So this topic can be relevant for prelims. The Munich Security Conference is the world's biggest conclave on security and geopolitical matters. It was launched in 1963 at the famous Hotel Bayerischer Hof in Munich in Germany. It basically brings together government leaders, prime ministers, presidents, foreign ministers, defense ministers, and military officials, intelligence officers, diplomats, and academia, journalists, right? Research students. They all come together at this annual conclave, which is the biggest international security conference in the world. Clear? So, this is the Munich Security Conference. It focuses on geopolitical development, security threats, all the new age emerging threats. It also focuses on economic issues, on energy related problems, on climate change. Anything which could affect global security is something which is debated and discussed here by all the experts. So just make a note of what is the Munich Security Conference. So, on this note, I bring my analysis to an end. I hope it's been an interesting and useful discussion. If you like the session, please hit the like button, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That's it. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.